Yo, 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 what it do? What it be? It's your boy A.N.T. repping the motherfucking gang. You know we don't play none of that. And if you a lame, you can't hang. All of that. And I'm back. And today I'm gonna be talking about arguably the most controversial figure in history. Period. I mean, none other than Adolf Hitler, responsible for more deaths than anybody in human history. Period. Uh, 5 million non Jewish people, 6 million Jewish civilians were systematically slaughtered by Nazis across Europe. 59 to 74 million more were killed in combat or by war related disease and famine worldwide during World War II. All because a failed painter thought he could save the world through brutal ethnic cleansing and warfare. And he would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for those meddling commies, those crooked teeth Brits, and those damn American rednecks painting bad bitches on their bombers like hooligans. But in all seriousness, no. In all seriousness, though, I think Hitler was an era merchant. And what I mean by that is he came around in the right place at the right time, and what he was selling to people at the time worked to a certain extent, but I don't think that shit would really fly nowadays. But let's go back, and if you look at the context of it all, Hitler's run was based on incredible luck and belief in himself. So let's go all the way back to his birth. Now, he was born on 4/20, 1889 in Austria-Hungary. He grew up in a poor household with an abusive father. His mother would try and protect him from his abusive father, but it didn't really work out too well. She stayed with him. So Hitler and his pops was at constant odds. In 1900, Edmund Hitler, Adolf's younger brother, died from the measles. And Hitler's attitude in school worsened. And I mean, he started to hate school. He started to fall in love with art. And he never was a fan of the structure or discipline of school. Now, his father did everything he could to beat structure and discipline into him. So it's easy to see the disconnect from that angle and why, Hitler wouldn't like structure or discipline in that manner. But again, his little brother's death didn't really help his situation with his pops at all. And in 1903, Papa Hitler died, and Hitler got to enroll in the school he always wanted to. I mean, he felt more freedom after his father's death. And he actually graduated school in 1905, and he was actually fairly content with just graduating. He didn't really have any ambitions after he finished primary school. And even though he finished school, I would like to point out that Hitler was never really the best student. He often fought with his teachers for a multitude of reasons. And in 1907, Hitler left Hungary for Vienna to study the fine arts, and he actually got rejected by the university twice. See, Hitler wasn't the sharpest bulb in a crayon box, or however the saying goes, but there's no telling if Hitler would have gotten into Vienna's art school. History would have played out differently, because in December of that year, Hitler's mom passed away, and he went broke and had to live in a hostel. So he was going through it, getting rejected by art school, going broke. His mom passed away. All of those would play a role in the monster that Hitler would eventually become. Now, some people may theorize, or there's actually a theory that an ethical question posed that maybe what would happen if we went back and killed baby Hitler. Now, killing babies is wrong, okay? Just keep that's my personal opinion. And if we're talking about ethics, wouldn't it be more ethical to put baby Hitler in a stable home where he wasn't getting beat? That's just me though. But sorry for digressing. But if I may, let me actually dispel some common myths that have been spread throughout history and actually dive into some more butterfly effect theories for a moment. See, neither Hitler's mom nor his dad was Jewish. There have been misconceptions that either one of his parents were Jewish or something like that, and that was the beginning of his hatred for Jews. But that's not actually the case. In his early years, Hitler had expressed nationalistic sentiments about Germany, and throughout history, Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary have always been close. And I don't mean just geographically. I mean, one thing that each country had in common with each other was that they didn't really like Jews very much. Now, to put it in perspective, while Jews were never outright slaves in Europe, the whole Egypt thing is a whole different rabbit hole we'll go down in another video, but the Jewish population in that region of Europe at that time were heavily persecuted and discriminated against. I mean, Hitler was exposed to some of these propaganda tactics while he was in Vienna, and it's not far-fetched to think that his anti-Jewish beliefs stemmed from here and blossomed along with his nationalistic sentiments in kind of a twisted rose bush of death and hatred. But to compare what Jews had to endure during the 30s and 40s, it was basically a speed run of what America had done to African American and indigenous tribes in America for decades. And if we're talking about present day, it's essentially what Israel is doing to Palestine right now, but free Palestine type shit. Now, the extent of which the propaganda in Vienna against Jews molded Hitler's stance on them is really unknown. What is known, though, is that Hitler did have a Jewish man buy some paintings from him in Vienna and help put some money in his pocket when he was really down on his luck. And a Jewish doctor actually saved his mother or helped her as she was dying or something like that. So it's really unknown where Hitler's hatred of Jews stemmed from. But let's fast forward 7 years through Hitler's filler era and jump to 1914 when World War I kicked off. And interestingly enough, Hitler did serve, but not for Germany or Austria-Hungary. No, he thought the latter's army was a little too genetically impure for his taste. So he served for the Bavarian army, and he didn't actually really do much. He saw almost no action, still managed to spend most of the war hurt. In fact, he was recovering from being blinded from mustard gas when he found out that Germany lost the war. And that supposedly made Hitler have another fit of blindness. Now, that might be a little dramatic if you ask me, but supposedly that's what happened. After World War I, though, Germany's economy and military were severely crippled, not just from the war, but the Treaty of Versailles put massive sanctions on Germany in order for them to keep being Germany and not get dissolved like the Ottoman Empire or invaded by anybody else. They had to pay massive reparations and all that shit. However, some Germans couldn't understand how they lost when they were never invaded. So a conspiracy that the Jewish population somehow stabbed Germany in the back and sold them out basically took hold, and Jews were pretty much blamed for anything that was going wrong in Germany at the time. Now, back then, there was no ADL or NAACP or Stop Asian Hate Movement or none of that shit. Back then, being openly racist or discriminatory towards immigrants or other races was kind of normal everywhere. I mean, in America, we had propaganda and discriminatory laws against African Americans, Asians, Native Americans, and I mean, they even attempted borderline genocide on the latter for more land, which, I mean, there's kind of a theme with Hitler doing that shit too, but I'll get to that later. In Russia, they were fighting with each other, but Russia has this thing where only Russia can fight with Russia. But if you step in, then Russia kind of teams up and gangs up on you, and then they get back to fighting each other because they really hate each other more than anybody else, I guess. But then there's Germany, who they really hated Jews, even though there was a massive Jewish population across Eastern Europe. The hatred increased after World War I, and since Hitler had no political or educational aspirations after World War I ended, he kind of stayed in the army. So in 1919, he was tasked by the military to spy on a group called the German Workers' Party. While spying on this political party, he realized that he actually agreed with their anti-capitalist, anti-Marx, and anti-Jewish ideologies, but mostly the latter too. So on September 16th, Hitler wrote a letter to party member Adolf Gemlich in which he explained that the aim of the government must unshakably be the removal of Jews altogether. So clearly at this point, Hitler had drank the proverbial Kool-Aid, and he was devoted to not just hating Jews, But he genuinely believed the extermination of Jews would just magically solve all the problems in Germany, or maybe even the world. But he even designed the Workers' Party banner, which is now the infamous swastika with the white circle and the red background. I mean, the swastika was a Hindu and even a Native American symbol for good luck, but it's been bastardized by the Nazis, just like the Aryan race, which, I mean, well, I'll get to more on the origins of the Aryan race in a second, the real origins, at least. But, I mean, Hitler was so down with the party, he even suggested they change their name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party to appeal to both left and right-wing voters. Now, the party actually held little to no socialist ideologies. Now, Hitler definitely wasn't a socialist, but he was a nationalist, and he believed that since he wasn't a communist or a capitalist and opposed both, the party would be socialist. Again, by name only, because that's not really how that works. He's actually more of like fascist. He was a really big fan of Mussolini, but again, I'll get to that here in a second. In a truly comedic twist of fate, though, I mean, some of you may wonder where the term Nazi maybe originated from, or maybe some people just assume that it's always been used to describe an idiotic D-bag. It's actually kind of true. You see, Nazi was a Bavarian slang term for a dumb hillbilly. It was their word for it. So the term was in fact used as a derogatory term for National Socialists, but it's extra funny because Hitler himself was in fact a Bavarian hillbilly. You just can't make this shit up sometimes. So when Hitler came into power, he had the word banned along with any art that wasn't considered Aryan enough, and this led to another blunder where a public display of banned art got thousands to show up and appreciate, art, not the whole bullshit Nazi propaganda that was being pushed onto them, and nobody was trying to see that shit, but they did show up to see all the art that got confiscated from them. And I mean, after shaping the new Nazi party in his image through shrewd manipulation and intimidation, Hitler kind of figured, why couldn't he do that to Germany as a whole, to the government? And by 1923, I mean, he was a C-list political figure known for his passionate speeches. He had somewhat of a small cult following, and he believed he could lead a coup against the German government. So he tried with his Nazi party, and he failed miserably. 16 Nazis and 4 police officers were killed in the melee and in the coup attempt. But Hitler ended up getting thrown in jail for high treason for 5 years. I mean, and peep this, y'all. Peep this. Hitler wasn't even a German citizen at this point. He was going on tirades about Jews and immigrants ruining Germany. And he was an immigrant from Bavaria ruining Germany. So, I mean, I guess he wasn't a complete liar. But while he was in jail, he wrote a book called Mein Kampf, aka My Struggle, which it essentially detailed his plans to take over Germany and his hatred of the Jews, of course. And he equated Jews to subhuman germs that needed to be eradicated from not just Germany, but probably the world, like I said. But even the book dropped in 1925, and that shit didn't even go aluminum, y'all. It was so trash. But after he rose to power, it became a bestseller, of course, and today it's essentially the Aryan Brotherhood's Bible. Hitler only ended up doing 9 months, though. It's not like he was in prison for that whole 5 years. He actually got out in 9 months, and when he got out the slammer, I mean, politics were kind of different. Germany's economy was kind of stable. But he used his newfound fame as a political prisoner as leverage to continue his leadership of the Nazis. And, he continued to be the face of the Nazi party. And he continued to shape the party in his image through manipulation and fear-mongering, as he would with Germany when he seized power through the same means. But Germany's economy, like I said, Germany's economy was doing pretty good. So he didn't have an angle for political agitation. That is until the US stock market crashed, and that shit hit Germany hard too. And major banks collapsed in Germany, millions were jobless, and this allowed Hitler to and the Nazis really to promise to fix the economy. They promised to completely ignore the Treaty of Versailles, and they wanted to give people jobs, and that was another one of their promises. And of course, they would solve the age-old Jewish question. And by 1933, Hitler and the Nazis would seize power in Germany. All judicial, legislative, and military powers were now in Hitler's control. And here's where Hitler's genius gets mythologized and romanticized, because after he became dictator, sure, Germany's economy got better. He ignored the Treaty of Versailles, strengthened the military, people had jobs, except the economy wasn't really better. Germany stopped paying World War I damages, the reparations from, the Treaty of Versailles and all that. So America stepped up and was paying it for them for a certain amount of time. And so they were paying Germany's debts so the country wouldn't collapse completely and potentially cause more unrest in Europe. And people had jobs, but instead of a socialist structure, Nazi policies resembled Mussolini's fascist regime, like I said earlier. Hitler was low-key a fan of Mussolini and used a lot of his tactics and strategies in controlling his population. Now, if you were a farmer in Nazi Germany, then you were going to be a farmer your whole life. A lot of the jobs were just working for the Nazis, helping build the metaphorical war machine. Now, let's not forget that the millions in forced labor camp working for free until they died like cattle, though they didn't even count. So everybody's saying that, oh, Hitler kept people with jobs. Yeah, they're not counting the millions of people that were literally being used like cattle to help the Nazis and fund the war machine and all that. But again, we'll get to more on the war machine in a minute. But there's a few other myths about Nazi Germany that I'd like to address. Now, not everyone in Nazi Germany agreed with everything that was happening. Now, actually, even when Hitler was dictator, he and the Nazis never got more than 38% of the popular vote. But when you got the Gestapo going to the polls and going to people's houses, it doesn't matter if people agree. They didn't have to, but they would comply or be killed, which goes into the persisting rumors that the Nazis took everyone's guns. It's not true. Gun laws in Hitler's Germany were actually extremely lax. But if an armed militia of Jews had been assembled to fight against the Nazis, their rebellion probably would have been shut down immediately, because almost every aspect of life was controlled by the Gestapo and the Nazis. I mean, people didn't have much of a choice. I'm sure in the future I'll do a video on Heinrich Himmler and Joseph Goebbels, because those two with Adolf Hitler, they were pretty much the three stooges of running Nazi Germany. I mean, Goebbels was crippled, but I mean, he was pretty good at creating propaganda, so Hitler valued him highly. And Heinrich Himmler, along with other prominent Nazis, held this belief that an ancient race of blonde-haired, blue-eyed humans were actually the reason for all of humanity's early successes. And while Germany was invading other countries during World War II, they would scour any and all historic sites and museums for evidence of this master race that never existed. Well, actually the Aryans did exist in the Middle East, but they definitely didn't help any advanced civilization, and they weren't white. The Nazis never found a shred of evidence for their master race, and Hitler actually teased Himmler for his idiotic beliefs, which is ironic as fuck, but either way, the Aryan race bullshit was a great excuse to destroy historical artifacts and dehumanize Jews and others that weren't Aryan enough for Nazi Germany. Then you had Adolf Hitler, who, as I said earlier, was an era merchant. A little known fact about Hitler is that he was a vegan, so yeah, there was no redeeming qualities about this guy. But the reason why he was vegan, and I kid y'all not, this is true, this is no cap, no gown, Hitler had horrible gas. Whenever he would get nervous, he would just start ripping ass. It started when he was young, and he was understandably embarrassed by it. He tried everything from going vegan to trying 28 other drugs, including a crippling meth addiction, and getting injected with bull semen in his later years because Hitler's personal doctor was pretty much the equivalent of that guy from the Fallout show with the chems. That was him. So that's who was in charge of Germany. And if you think that he would have survived the social media era with something like that, oh no, they would have tore his ass up in any kind of debate, fam. You on what? Because why? Oh yeah, no, fam, get your crazy ass out of here. But that's who was in charge of Germany. And at first, he looked good, making all of his promises. He really had a 5-year plan to build Germany up to hopefully be able to take over Eastern Europe and then Russia and then possibly the rest of the world. And it all, like I said, it all started perfectly, or that's how it seemed when Hitler made pacts with Italy and Japan, because they were the only countries willing to be cool with this guy who was clearly on a path to war. But the rest of the world was fresh off of World War I, and nobody was really trying to be on that again. Both of these alliances would come back to bite Hitler, mostly because what would become the Axis powers would be more of a loose affiliation than a coordinated confederation like the Allies. But I'll talk more on that in a minute. Even though Hitler's main objective was to take Russia because he considered it perfect land for his new Aryan nation, I mean, he was convinced that Russia was also controlled by Jewish Bolshevists. So he had taking over Russia was Hitler's main goal from rip, like I said. But he signed a non-aggression pact with Stalin at the start of the war, or even before the war even started. So while he was, taking over Europe, he didn't have to worry about fighting a war on two fronts with Russia. And with all these moves in place, Hitler decided to up the ante on the game of chicken he was playing with the League of Nations. He annexed the German Rhinelands in 1936, the Czech Republic, Austria, and Hungary in 1937. And as he was preparing to annex Poland, the League told him, hey, playboy, we see you getting a little too much dip on your chip. If you try and take Poland, we gonna have some motherfucking problems. And Hitler called their bluff. And with good reason, too. I mean, they let him get this far. Why not see how far he could really take it? I mean, he genuinely believed the League of Nations wouldn't step in and just let him take over Europe. And he was actually shocked when France and Britain declared war on Germany on September 1st, 1939. And a day later, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and Canada all jumped in too. And thus, World War II was officially underway. Even though he didn't expect the League of Nations to declare war, Hitler was ready in case they did. And even though there was a fight for Poland, Hitler's blitzkrieg strategy secured not only Poland, but the Nazis swiftly invaded and took France as well. Now, these early victories heavily inflated Hitler's already massive ego. While he was enjoying quick victories in Europe, his allies weren't as successful though. Italy was getting whooped in Africa, so he had to lend them some troops. And this is where those loose affiliations would come back to haunt him, because there was no coordinated efforts by the Axis powers. They were all kind of doing their own thing. But either Hitler thought things were just going so well he could break his pact with Russia because he genuinely believed Russia was on the ropes, or he knew his window for taking over the world was starting to close. Either way, in 1940, Hitler began his plans to invade Russia, and even though it would mean fighting a war on two fronts, which is exactly what he was trying to avoid in the first place, but again, his ego was bigger than the Hindenburg at this point, and his impatience would be the spark that would get us to the oh humanity part. As I was saying though, Hitler was obsessed with invading Russia, and his master plan was to take over Russia. Anything else was just extra to him. So he planned to invade the Russian oil fields in the Caucasus and use those resources to fuel the rest of his Russian invasion. And that was a good plan if he was actually patient enough to stick to it. But for some reason, he became preoccupied with trying to take Stalingrad and Leningrad, which took more manpower and resources. And that Russian winter was beginning to take its toll on the Nazis too. He never even ended up taking the Caucasus, Stalingrad, or Leningrad. That that harsh Russian winter and the Russians' undying spirit kept Hitler and the Nazis from achieving anything other than massive Russian casualties. Operation Barbarossa was a complete failure, and the Nazis wasted so much time and resources on it. Hitler's window for world domination was closing rapidly, and on December 7th, 1942, Japan would attack America in the attack on Pearl Harbor. Hitler had no idea Japan was planning to attack America, but they were supplying the Allied powers with war supplies since the start of World War II. So even though he didn't know about the attack, he figured America would be too busy fighting Japan on the other side of the world to worry about what he had going on. But he was wrong again, and America was pulling up wherever Axis powers were, and wherever they were on the map. It didn't matter. It didn't matter where you were from. None of that. If you was down with the Axis, America was going to turn up and make you feel that Pearl Harbor get back for sure. Hitler could only watch in horror as Uncle Sam came through and slammed that window for world domination shut. While German troops were starving and freezing in Russia, Italy was getting cooked across Africa. Japan was now fighting China, Russia, and America. The Axis were literally fighting the world, and the world was about to hit that Hulk Hogan leg drop, you feel me? The Allies started intercepting and deciphering Nazi communications, and then they began to feed Hitler false info about this massive invasion that would take place in Calais, France. For over a year, Hitler would plan to counter this invasion and heavily fortify Calais. Then, on June 6, 1944, the Allies took advantage of not only Hitler's overly inflated ego, but they discovered Hitler hated being woken up while sleeping. So early in the morning, around 6 a.m., I want to say, on the Operation D-Day, aka Operation Overlord, was carried out, not in Calais, but on the beaches of Normandy. While Hitler slept, the Allies took strongholds on the beach, and by the time he woke up and ordered German troops stationed in Calais to go to Normandy, it is too late. British and American troops took a foothold in France and continued putting belt to ass even after the reinforcements showed up. Maybe if Hitler hadn't spent more money on V-2 rockets that were less effective than Wile E. Coyote Acme rockets than America spent on the nuclear bomb, or if he actually approved of the popular STG-44, which was highly effective in battles like D-Day, but since he didn't think of it and he kind of shit on it, and didn't even know it was being produced behind his back. But once he discovered how effective it was and ordered it mass-produced, again, it was too late. Allied forces were sweeping in from one side of Europe, and a day after Benito Mussolini and his fascist regime were executed in Italy, as Russian forces were sweeping through Germany from the other side, Adolf Hitler committed suicide in his Berlin bunker on April 28, 1945. As the Allies liberated the rest of Nazi Germany, the horrors of the genocide taking place within Germany using concentration camps were discovered. With Hitler dead and America finishing the Manhattan Project, the war was pretty much over. And I'll talk more again in a future video about whether or not dropping 2 nukes on Japan was really necessary. But even after Hitler's death, you still have idiots that believe that they're better than others because of their bloodline or skin color, which of course, that line of thinking didn't start with Hitler, but after the master race has lost pretty much every war in recent history, I couldn't tell you what's so dominant about it. Some people even doubt the Holocaust even happened despite the mountains of evidence and witness testimony. It's our duty as humans to make sure a racist, pathological, lying idiot like Hitler never gets that kind of power again. And instead, people like that should be ostracized and ridiculed for their moronic, outdated beliefs. And like I said, not everyone was cool with Nazis when they were in power. They got killed, for disagreeing with them, pretty much. Some people sold out their own neighbors, though, in order to not die. They sold them out to the Gestapo and never faced any kind of repercussions. They just kind of had to live with that guilt. Anne Frank never met Adolf Hitler. Yet he's responsible for her and millions more that were slaughtered. But her story and so many others should serve as a warning to just how evil others can be when it's legal to do so. Keep in mind, all that shit was legal to do in Nazi Germany. In closing, if you a Nazi sympathizer, fuck you. Dead ass. Especially in 2024. This shit is not the time nor the place, fam. Sorry, you in the wrong part of the history books, fam. But like I said, you still support that racist, dumb bullshit, bro. Fuck you. You hillbilly inbred fuck. But if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like. If you disliked it, go ahead and leave a dislike. You could even leave a comment on maybe some things I got wrong or even left out. Because, yo, World War II was really a fucking crazy time. I mean, really, there's never not been a crazy time in history. But that shit was really wild, and it's kind of a point, it's a flashpoint in history where every country got together for one reason or another to fight for or against one another. Damn near the whole world was involved to some extent or got affected by it in some way. But again, like I said, anything more to add, leave a comment or something like that. Leave a like, dislike. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I got a Twitch, ANT_GGE. I also be on Twitter. I'm working harder on trying to tweet out and put on social media when I drop videos. But again, self-promotion, ain't nobody gonna do it for me. But y'all be safe. Don't get smoked. It's been your boy, ANT. And I'm out. I mean, I still got a few more moments left on the video, but I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up though. Y'all be safe again. Peace.
And not to like gawk at celebrities from behind a barrier. We're actually like properly invited. V to the I to the P. Jimmy, read my neck rolls. Entitled.